Which transfer portal additions are going to start day one for the Oklahoma Sooners?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Spring ball is underway, which begs the question, which portal additions for the Oklahoma Sooners will be day one starters, not named John Mateer?
Yeah,
you can be a day one starter for you.
Yeah, you can't really, it's not fair to really pick John Mateer. So we're going to actually do this outside of, the obvious name out there. But no, good point, John. Everyone's asking the question about the transfer portal for Oklahoma. And there was an article I saw in The Athletic saying that this transfer portal class has a lot of pressure on it for Oklahoma. And granted, I totally understand that. And that's also one reason why you go grab a guy like Jim Nagy, to where you're going to have to live in the transfer portal anyway, because that's just kind of the name of the game today. You need to find somebody that has a really good eye for evaluating not only lower level talent, but even P4 talent that you think makes sense to go after. So we're at that point. So John, if I'm looking at this, as I look at the transfers that have come in here, on the offensive side of the ball, we dove into one guy that has been, lighting things up and has been getting praised by, Sooner legends or whatnot out there. And it's got to be Javonnie Gibson. I think that he's probably one that's probably the easiest name to say that's going to end up starting. But I'm going to throw you a second one out there in that wide receiver room. And I think Keontez Lewis is going to be the one on the opposite side of him, especially with us waiting to see what Jaden Gibson's going to be doing physically. I'd say, right there, those two are going to be the ones that's probably going to be battling it out for a starting spot.
Kobe McKenzie said it well when he met with the media the other day. They don't bring people in here to sit. So the expectation is that people will come to Oklahoma and you're going to earn a spot to play. Keontez Lewis is an interesting choice for sure. I think everybody probably at this point expects Javonnie Gibson to start for the Sooners, especially if he shows out like he's been doing so far in spring ball. If we're sticking with offense, I'm going to go with Derek Simmons. I think that guy's going to end up starting at right tackle for you. I think that you could potentially see Luke Buklenko, depending on, a guy like Jacob Sexton's health status. If he can stay healthy and be healthy all off season, potentially he starts for you at either left tackle or left guard, or Jake Taylor at left tackle. But I think at right tackle, it's going to be Derek Simmons, where you have a really experienced tandem over on the right side, and him and Febechi Nwaiwu that John Mateer can trust on his front side. There's so much said about the blind side in football, but you also want to have that front side protected, because if you can see that pressure coming at you, it definitely changes your perspective on what you're going to do in a given play. So solidifying that with a veteran presence like Derek Simmons, I think makes a lot of sense.
It does. And like you said, it eliminates those yips that players will get whenever they start to see the pressure or feel it. And we know that John Mateer is pretty good at when it comes to running. That's what he did when he was at Washington State. He knew when to tuck and go. He knew when to take the sack. He knew when to run. He has a pretty good awareness of that. And so I think Derek Simmons is a really solid one. The reason why I really picked on Keontez Lewis is more so, one, he's older. Redshirt senior. He's played P4 ball, played at UCLA, played at Wisconsin for a couple of years. He redshirted due to injuries, what it seems like. And then because he was like one of the top, he was like second or third on the team in receiving. What was that? 20 catches, 313 yards, which is a pretty solid year. His second year in college, and then went ahead and went to Southern Illinois to really get his reps up. 49 catches, 813 yards, 5 touchdowns. And he comes in at 6'2", almost 200 pounds, 196 to be exact. So you're not getting a little dude. You're getting a guy with size. You add him with Javonnie Gibson, so you get two more big guys. And then when Deion Burke shows up, which that gives you 3 transfer wide receivers. I figure they're probably not practicing Deion Burks. They're more so having him, put him in a little bit of bubble wrap just to make sure he's healthy once the season hits, which I get. I mean, it is football. The unfortunate thing is people are going to get hurt because it's football. It's a sport where people, hit each other really, really hard. So you bubble wrap Deion Burks, have him ready for fall camp to just, get his training going and get him ready for the first game of the season. But it feels like Keontez Lewis and Javonnie Gibson have a very good chance of really standing out there at wide receiver for you.
Yeah, defensively, it's going to be interesting because you got a guy like Kendal Daniels who's going to be in that linebacker rotation. But, Teddy Lehman made a really good point about him in that he hasn't really played a lot of inside linebacker. He's played some outside, some strong, some safety, some nickel stuff, but they're using him as an inside linebacker, at least as a rotational piece. So that'll be fascinating to see his development. And then you also got the Marvin Jones Jr. piece. The guy has a lot of potential. Now, yes, whether he becomes a starter for you this year or they go with a guy like PJ Adebawore or Danny Okoye opposite of R. Mason Thomas, that's going to be the question. But I think those two guys probably have the best chance of any transfer addition on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm thinking Marvin Jones Jr. is the one that's going to end up starting. I mean, he's having a really good camp. He's got the size at 6'5", 255, so he's going to be definitely imposing. And he did pretty good at Florida State last year, and he was okay at Georgia. You could tell that there was more to be desired out of his play. And it sounds like, based upon early reports, he's been busting his tail since he's got here. And we know that the coaching staff's not holding back. All the recruits that have been talking about their visit at Oklahoma and being at the practice, that's all they said was, they ain't your friend in practice. We like that. You can tell that they're coaching and they care about the actual production that comes from, all the work. So they're not allowing them to be out there and be lazy. They're pushing those boys to work their butts off. So to me, I can see those two are actually really good choices overall. Because we didn't really get very many defensive transfers. Now that I think about it, it was it was just those two.
So of course,
that's really it. That's all we can talk about.
I thought, oh wait, no, they were.
Wait, that was it. Yeah, we could probably use an additional corner just to have some additional depth, but we'll talk about that in the last segment, because when I looked at the secondary and looked at the roster, John, we got a lot of dudes that really could be playing very soon. But I'd say Marvin Jones is probably, out of the two, I think Marvin Jones Jr. is the one that's most likely going to get the start over Kendal Daniels. Because like you said, Kendall's never really played interior, and they're moving him there. But I feel like he's going to be a player that they're going to move around and try to put in that similar Isaiah Simmons role that they had at Clemson, because Daniels has that size. I mean, Kendal Daniels comes in, he's 6'4", and he's a legitimate 6'4", like 235. Like, he's a legitimate big dude. And you can move him to Cheetah. You can, because he can play safety. He's done that before. He's played out, the strong side, Sam linebacker. So because you could just move him around, I would just throw him in random places on the field and have teams try to figure out what exactly he's going to do. Yeah. That way, you can have everybody else just go out there and make it happen and just say, tell him, go get ball. If you just go get ball and make that happen. So I can see more Marvin Jones Jr. starting, and then Kendal Daniels coming in and a lot of situational stuff. And like I said, just toss them on the field in random places.
Yeah, the two additions they made defensively are guys that are going to have a big impact. Consider that Marvin Jones Jr. had 5 sacks for Florida State. I bet there weren't a lot of situations where he was actually getting to rush the passer. Yep. Florida State was terrible last year. They got behind in a lot of circumstances where teams didn't have to throw very much in the second half of games. So he was not getting as many opportunities to rush the passer. If they can create a tandem between R. Mason Thomas and Marvin Jones Jr. that can emulate what South Carolina and Ohio State were able to do with their dynamic edge duos, Oklahoma's defense could really, really hit the next level. What needs to hit the next level? That's the secondary for the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Hey, you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. It's got all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So you take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On College for half off your first year. And you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 different options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, which one I love, as well as Protein Plus or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and keep you fueled all day long. Like, I love that Factor has these little like egg bites for breakfast. They're like one of the best snacks to have, especially when I leave the gym, packed with protein. It's probably one of my favorite things I order from them whenever I get my meals. So you can eat smart with Factor. Get started with at factormeals.com/lockedon50 off and use the code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off to get 50% off your plus free shipping on your first box.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. The Oklahoma Sooners have a secondary question mark, at least at cornerback, but at safety, they look good to go. I mean, that's been a group that's been one of the better position groups for the Sooners over the last couple of years. Brandon Hall's done a great job. But on the outside, you've got some potential in a lot of blue chip prospects that Javonnie has recruited to Oklahoma. Now we just got to see those guys live up to that potential.
Yeah, the secondary's got a lot of good pieces that we can work with. And like you said, Javonnie as well as Brandon Hall have done a fantastic job over the last couple of years. There have been questions about Javonnie and the transfers he's brought in. Like, he hasn't brought in a transfer that just took over the way you would have liked. Like, I really like Des Malone. I didn't have any issues with Kenai Walker. I saw improvements over him year over year, but he had a tendency of getting burnt. If you brought him in for short yardage, he was fantastic, but he would get outran by other players. But when you look at the young secondary, and this is the one thing as I dug into it, you've got 5 guys that are over 6 feet tall, 6 feet tall or taller. That's 5, and you got 7 of them. They're 5'11" up. So you've got some height there. And I think that the competition is going to be great. Eli Bowen is currently in a boot. He sprained his ankle, so he's down for a little bit. And I think Jeremiah Newcomb as well is kind of sitting out. But I mean, you still got Devon Jordan, the track athlete from Tulsa Union, which, was one that we feel like we kind of forget about it. 5'11". He needs to put on a little bit more bulk. He's 177 right now, but he's actually a really good corner. He can keep up with some of the fast players he has to go up against. So all he needs to do is leverage his athleticism. And then you got Jacoby Johnson, who we start to see some, growth out of him over the last couple of years. And he's 6'2", 205. What you need in the SEC is at least have one big corner to go with your other corner. So the list to me, especially at DB, at the cornerback spot, we got some players that it's going to surprise some folks.
I mean, it's a lot of potential. And it's a position group that has probably the most intriguing position battle on the defensive side of the ball. You might put like offensive line as maybe the most intriguing position battle on the team, but cornerback is right up there, especially with Eli Bowen sitting out. There's a lot of opportunities for guys to potentially earn some snaps. But really, like we said earlier this week, it comes down to you got to have Gentry Williams and his shoulder healthy all year long.
Yeah.
And I think that'll make you feel a lot more comfortable about what you have at cornerback than you do right now. Are there some guys that are really good, potentially players? Absolutely, there are. From Jeremiah Newcomb and Cortland Guillory and Malik Hawkins, those guys got potential. Jacoby Johnson has a lot of potential. It's just time to start seeing that potential come to fruition. And, it's a good thing that a lot of the turnover at quarterback has happened this year, where, you're not seeing guys like Jackson Dart. You're not seeing Jalen Milroe, although you cook Jalen Milroe. You're not seeing, Quinn Ewers, although everybody expects Arch to be better, it's still, you're going from a veteran quarterback to a first-year starter at quarterback.
Yep.
In Arch Manning. You get to see Nico, but Nico was a little bit gun shy at times last year. Does he get more confidence going into this year? We'll see. You still get to see Lenore Sellers passing. I mean, he can do it. It's not his game. So that you have turnover or that you have question marks at cornerback this year, to me, is not as concerning as it was last year. But I think that they can answer those questions if Gentry Williams is healthy, if Eli Bowen is healthy. I think everybody feels a lot better about the cornerback group. But Jacoby Johnson, man, now's the time for that guy to take a step. If there's anybody in the DB room that it's time for them to make their presence known, it's that guy. He's been around. He's been here. It's year 3 for him, right? It's time to start seeing that breakout happen. He didn't really deal with injuries much last year. And he had some good moments, like moments you didn't hear his name called. To me, as a cornerback, if you don't hear their name called, it's a good moment.
Yeah.
Also, some moments where he struggled. He fell down on a couple routes, and that burnt Oklahoma. But now it's time for him to put it together with a big offseason and go be an impact player.
No, I agree with you there. It's time for him to step up. So when I'm looking at these young corners we have, who do you think has a better chance of getting some extended run from Jocelyn Malaska, Tristan Haynes, Malik Hawkins, Cortland Guillory, Devon Jordan, or Jeremiah Newcomb?
I'm going to say Malik Hawkins simply because he knows what's expected. He's not going to be surprised by what the coaching staff is asking him to do, is expecting him to do, and what it takes to play at a high level. I mean, from Michael to, Big Mike, like he has all the inside information that he needs to make an impact in year 1. If he's able to get the defense down, show out in spring ball and fall camp. We've seen that they were not shy about playing a true freshman at corner just last year in Eli Bowen.
Yeah.
And I'd venture to say that Malik Hawkins has a bit higher of a ceiling than Eli Bowen does. And so that's the guy that I think is kind of went really, really underrated in the 2025 recruiting class. But I think it has an opportunity to stand out above the rest simply because of his background.
No, I'm with you on that. To me, Tristan Haynes, man, watching him at Carl Albert at his height at 6'1", he's put on a little bit more weight, but at 173, I feel like he's going to be threatening folks for their jobs. I think that he has the talent to do that. And I think Cortland Guillory has so much dog in him. Mm-hmm. He's going to be pushing and fighting for a chance to play. But that does not drop down anything on Malaska as well as Devon Jordan, which I liked watching Devon Jordan at Union and seeing the way that he was able to compete. He's super fast, and that's one of those things that's much needed. You need track guys at corner sometimes because you're going to be dealing with some dudes that got some jets. I mean, watch Cam Coleman basically suck up Kip Lewis on that pick 6. He chased him all the way down from across the field. You're like, oh God, this dude is fast. So you've got to have guys keep up with that. But I do think that I think Tristan Haynes is the one, if I was to pick one, that's probably going to jump out. We didn't really get to talk much about the safeties. We're going to have to do that on another episode and really dive into that because, man, that and Cheetah, whoo! Man.
I think everybody's excited
that's our strongest room. Yeah, everybody's excited about safety. So we're gonna hold that back on y'all, and y'all get that later.
Yeah, because there's so many good players in that group. It's crazy that they've been able to stack them like that. And we haven't even seen the icing on the cake at safety just yet. Yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch. We got to talk offensive line. I totally got the rundown confused in my brain over there, but we'll talk offensive line coming up next. Are they improving? Are they going to be ready to have a resurgent season? Are they going to bounce back? We'll discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And this is a message from our sponsor at Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form or every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. So the offensive line, that's the thing we're going to discuss now, because it's a group that was not good last year. It was not up to the Oklahoma Sooner standard, as much of the offense was not up to the Oklahoma Sooner standard.
Yep.
But a lot of folks are really down on the group, from the assistant coach that runs the show to the talent that they've got in the room, because of how poor of a year it was last year. I mean, for the first half of the season, you couldn't pass protect, you couldn't run block, you couldn't really do anything. Second half of the season, you showed some improvement. You pass protected just a little bit better, except for like the end of the Ole Miss game. You ran blocked a lot better against Alabama, maybe not as good as you would have liked against Navy. It was an up and down season for this group. So Jay, call me crazy, but I really feel like that was an aberration year, that we're not going to see a similar performance out of that group in 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we look at this, especially this article here. We allowed FBS worst 50 sacks last year. Now, to me, majority of sacks is a QB stat for a reason, because it's typically because the quarterback didn't do his part and get rid of the ball. Now, there was cases in last year. I'm not absolving the O-line of anything here, because there were a lot of situations where the O-line just got beat up and the quarterback got smacked right as soon as he had the ball in his hand. So, not saying the O-line wasn't bad, but I think of that as a QB stat, but I can't think of it a QB stat in this situation for this team because of not last season. Not completely. I can't. And so I'm fair on that. The good thing is that, like you talked about in the first segment with Derek Simmons coming in as a transfer, supposedly he's country strong, as in country strong. So he's out there throwing dudes around. He's pushing people around, and he's making space. You bring in true freshman Owen Hollenbeck, which I love because he's a power lifter as well as a wrestler. So you know that he's not losing no one-on-one battles that easily. You got to work your butt off to get around that kid. He's going to do everything he can legally to win that battle with you. Some things may not seem like it's legal, but he gonna make it work. So I don't believe that this line will be what it was last year. I think this line should be able to dramatically drop that sack number, especially because John Mateer is the type to throw the ball, or he's going to tuck and run. He's going to be decisive, which will help this offensive line be able to figure out what to do. And we're bringing back more experience. Like, there's so many offensive line configurations. Like one I saw with because Kevin Wilson's working with the line with Bill Bedenbaugh, and I saw one recruit was talking about how he just loves Bill Bedenbaugh and the way that they work with the players and how they get into them. It's like they're really coaching. It made me feel good. I'm like, all right, I see recruits over here liking some actual coaching. But there was one configuration I saw that I liked. You had at, I think, left tackle was, I believe it was Derek Simmons was actually at the left on this. Actually, Buklinko was at the left. You had Eddie Pierre-Louis at left guard. Center was Troy Everett. Right guard was Febechi Nwaiwu. Right tackle was Derek Simmons. And then I think Jake Taylor was also in one. He rotated at tackle a little bit. Isaiah Autry-Dent rotated also. But John, you put Eddie Pierre-Louis at left guard? I've been talking about that. I've been thinking that him and Nwaiwu would be amazing guards together, because Nwaiwu now year 2 under Bill Bedenbaugh should be able to make that next leap, that, McKay Matauer leap that everyone actually started liking the dude after year 1. Give him that second year bump. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be good. Same thing with Eddie Pierre-Louis at the left, because I think that he'll do a better job of blocking the blind side for John Mateer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talent, and I think there's a lot of potential. You've got the experienced guys in Simmons, Nwaiwu, Everett, Buklenko, but your ceiling is higher if guys like Eddie Pierre-Louis takes a job. If a guy like, whether it's Sexton or Taylor or even Michael Fasusi, takes that left tackle job and raises the ceiling. So I think Luke Buklenko is going to be solid. I just don't know if he's like definitively an SEC offensive tackle, or is he an SEC left tackle? That's the part that I'm going to have questions about. I feel pretty solid that they're going to have a really nice trio on the interior, and I like Derek Simmons, and I like what he's going to be able to bring to the table. It's just that left tackle spot I think is going to be the question. Because listen, Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton, both former 4-star guys, they just haven't been healthy.
Yep.
And to quote the great Bill Parcells, the best ability is availability.
Exactly.
And if you're not going to be available, it's hard to trust that you're going to be able to do what you're supposed to do on a given Saturday. So left tackle is arguably one of the best or most intriguing, position battles right now on the roster. You could throw left guard in there if you want to call Jacob Sexton versus Eddie Pierre-Louis a position battle at left guard with Heath Ozida sitting out. I think you could do that because they wanted to play Jacob Sexton at left guard last year. It just didn't work out because of all the injuries that they were suffering along the offensive line. So it's going to be really, really fascinating, but it comes back to my earlier point that I just feel like this is going to be a bounce back year for Oklahoma, because how often does Bill Bedenbaugh have a bad offensive line?
It's rare. And they usually always bounce back. Usually bounce back the next year.
And they may not be like, not every year is it a Joe Moore award winning or Joe Moore contending offensive line, but most years it's solid to really good. And most of those years it's really good. The 2023 offensive line, it wasn't great, but it was really good. When you had Walter Rouse and I can't remember who the left guard was, but you still had Andrew Rame at center. You had McCade Matauer at right guard, and you had not Anton Harrison, Tyler Guyton at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a really good group. Oh, Caden Green was at left guard.
Yeah. It was a mixture of Green and Troy Everett.
Yeah.
Troy Everett started, Green finished it.
Like, that wasn't a perfect group, but it was a group that was good enough to help them win 10 games and actually put them in a position where they honestly probably should have beat Kansas or Oklahoma State if not for some play calling problems from Jeff Levy.
And that's why I pointed out the year 2 bump for Febechi Nwaiwu he should get. Troy Everett got that this past season, right? Like, he ended up getting benched last year at left guard just because he not only was not his strength up, but his weight wasn't up. And Caden was able to come in there and push folks around. Well, then you got the next year, he gets hurt, and has to have knee surgery right before the season starts. And then he comes back right at SEC play. You see Troy Everett out there pushing SEC defensive lineman around. He was your best offensive lineman when he got on the field. And then at the same time, him and Nwaiwu were your most consistent. So you're right. The offensive line is not going to be perfect, but Bill Bedenbaugh's always done a great job of figuring things out. Like, he had to have multiple configurations on offensive line because dudes had labrum problems. Y'all see all them labrums that we had to have that was on the list of injured people? Obviously, shoulders were having issues, and it was probably more so because a lot of them were trying to make up for the inexperience around them. That happens. It's compensating for other stuff around you. To me, now Febechi Nwaiwu should give you that, like I said, that bump, that year 2 bump, because now he's been out there long enough. He's been out there for a full year with Bill Bedenbaugh and Schmitty to get the strength that he needs. And he's probably going to step up. I mean, he got SEC Player of the Week 1 week, which, man, I still can't believe they did that to that dude. How you going to put a video of him getting ran smooth over when he's SEC Player of the Week? That's just mean, SEC. That's just rude. But it's okay.
That's when they needed to just have, like, Offensive Line of the Week as opposed to, like, Offensive Lineman of the Week, because that was...
But that's of all videos to use, was that one? Y'all couldn't find another one?
Yeah. That was terrible.
No, you have to use the one he gets blown up on and Xavier Robinson score, but I digress.
Yeah.
I think that he'll get to that. He's gonna be one of your anchors. Him and Troy Everett will be your anchors there. Jacob Sexton, he gets healthy. He should be really good right there at the left. Like I said, add Eddie Pierre-Louis. And honestly, it's gonna either be between Derek Simmons and Jake Taylor at your right tackle to start. But I think Derek Simmons may end up getting it because I do believe he's got that country strength on him.
And he's going to have a healthy offseason to be able to contribute. And I think that matters. Like, you got to be healthy in the offseason so you can develop. If you're not healthy, you're not developing. You're not on the practice field, getting the offensive down and working with the guys next to you. That kind of stuff matters, and it's going to matter. But this is going to be a group, like most years, that we may not have a solid answer on who's starting along the offensive line until we get to the season. So it's going to be one of those questions that we continue to talk about, but we'll talk about the guys who create buzz in fall camp here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that notification bell as well to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. Also, go check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast with Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, breaking everything down as you get ready for NCAA tournament play. The SEC and Big Conference championships are happening right now. So go check out Locked On College Basketball, again, available wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.